Jimborzodan himi jan zoner monum jimbor ngam gyavda bagar targum santo shirmart Stumba tuje janla ki shigum sar amejan ruwar zering jangam sa jahur tijib shanlo yalla jime benzo jala surande gonti toban por shinji lo.
Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it, may we realize the Tathagata's meaning. In order to truly liberate all sentient beings, let us all wholeheartedly give rise to the supreme and profound bodhicitta. Next, we will begin discussing instructions for practitioners. Understand that all phenomena of samsara and nirvana are like dreams and illusions without any true reality, reflecting on the hopes and fears, the longing and confusion of gain and loss. Now abide in a state free from thoughts without acceptance or rejection. Today, we will continue this profound teaching. Previously, concerning our established method of practice, we extensively covered the principle of allowing everything that the eyes perceive to settle the mind into a tranquil state, as if it were merely a fleeting dream or an ephemeral illusion. In the end, there is no acceptance or rejection of what is seen as good or bad. There is neither joy nor displeasure, nor any sense of aversion. In precisely the same way, whatever sounds are distinctly heard by the ears and perceived are also not accepted or rejected, but abided in as dreamlike and illusory. In the end, whether one hears pleasant or unpleasant words, there is no attachment, aversion, hope, or fear. Whatever phenomena arise in the mind are also not strictly followed or rigidly clung to either, abide in the state of dreamlike illusion. In this particular way, any hopes, deep-seated fears, or strong aversions to various phenomena, one will not develop attachment or aversion toward them. The above is a very important and profound teaching. When we actually practice this principle in our lives, many people may not fully understand, and indeed many often ask, how exactly should I practice now? In fact, there are many methods of practice. Just as it is explained in the wish-fulfilling treasure, as a practitioner, according to your own circumstances, you can recite scriptures, you can meditate, you can practice the preliminaries, or practice emptiness, cultivate great compassion, or practice post-meditation states like seeing everything as dreamlike and illusory, and so on. There are indeed many methods of practice. Therefore, each person should, in the process of their own practice, choose for themselves a method that is especially suitable for their own mental continuum. It is best to practice this method over the long term. When it comes to recitation, choose a powerful and blessed practice, one that resonates well with your mind stream. This is very important to me. Regardless of the method, our practice must still have a core focus. For example, when it comes to recitation, at the very least, we should practice Guru Yoga every day and recite related prayers. In our practice, we should cultivate bodhicitta and non-dual awareness, as these are all extremely important. Therefore, throughout our extensive long-term study and careful contemplation, if we do not know how to practice at all, or if we have not engaged in any particular practice, then, as I mentioned yesterday, it will indeed be quite difficult for the Dharma to truly merge with our minds. A gap between Dharma and our mental continuum, as wide as the distance a horse could lie down in between. If that's the case, the Dharma remains the Dharma, and a person's mind stream remains a person's mind stream. The Dharma has not merged with one's heart. It's like having a piece of extremely parched leather next to a vast ocean of water. But the ocean water and the parched, dry, old leather cannot come into direct contact with each other, just like this helpful analogy. Therefore, we should, each time you contemplate the meaning of these teachings, and repeatedly apply them to our own mental continuum. Today, we discuss that the various forms vividly seen by our eyes, the distinct sounds clearly heard by our ears, and the diverse tastes profoundly experienced by our tongue, the delightful scents smelled by the nose, and the various sensations of pain felt by the body, all these, our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body, as well as the profound phenomena perceived by the mind as mentioned earlier, and the ones in the middle, tastes experienced by our tongue, the nose smelling various scents, and the body feeling diverse sensations. These have already been intentionally omitted, So, based on this comprehensive reasoning, we can confidently infer that in this significant way, we can effectively go from the faculty of the eye to the faculty of the mind, transitioning from external forms to internal forms, sounds, smells, tastes, touches, and all phenomena. That is to say, all the dharmas of the six sense bases, all the dharmas of the six sense faculties and six sense objects combine to give rise to the six consciousnesses and the 18 elements. In fact, within the 18 elements, all phenomena can be encompassed. So all phenomena, when they manifest, are the phenomena of samsara, and when one realizes emptiness, they are the phenomena of nirvana. All of these phenomena of samsara and nirvana are actually truly like a dream or an illusion without any real existence. This principle is not something we say just to encourage everyone to practice, saying that things are like a dream or an illusion. It's not like that. If one truly has wisdom and observes through the Madhyamaka and the Prajnaparamita Sutras, when conducting such analysis, everyone will come to understand that all phenomena are ultimately unattainable in the ultimate sense. And in the conventional sense, like a dream or an illusion, it doesn't matter whether you are a person of wisdom or someone without wisdom. As long as you investigate, you will definitely be able to reach this realization. Therefore, at this very point, everything is like a dream or an illusion, apparent yet lacking inherent existence. All are phenomena without any true reality. In the entire world, since these phenomena do not truly exist, why do all sorts of phenomena appear before us? This is due to the influence of thoughts of gain and loss caused by deluded thinking. Gain and loss, hope and fear, and so on, all kinds of confusion are all the result of our deluded thoughts. They give rise, in this world, to all sorts of rights and wrongs, gains and losses, benefits and harms, hopes and worries, and so forth, and thus a bewildering world unfolds before us. Therefore, by relying on the pith instructions of our teachers and the teachings of the great masters of the past, we have already discovered this principle. So now we can no longer afford to delay. At this point, we should abide in a state that is truly free from deluded thoughts and completely free from grasping or rejecting. This is very important. Now, through profound theory, we understand that all phenomena are actually insubstantial, much like a fleeting dream or an ephemeral illusion. So, after truly realizing this, we should do everything we can to practice accordingly. When practicing, as it is also stated in the records of the Source Mirror, a practitioner of right mindfulness neither grasps nor rejects. If we are truly mindful, it seems like we are simply observing our body, speech, and mind in daily life, and this is called right mindfulness in the records of the Source Mirror. To practice right mindfulness actually means to neither grasp nor reject. This is a relatively advanced state. Just as it is also stated in the Vimalakirti Sutra, because nothing can be obtained, there is neither grasping nor rejecting. Since there is nothing to gain, there is no grasping and no rejecting, no grasping, no rejecting. One can indeed abide in such a profound state, so from a certain perspective, it is truly the case. Yesterday, it was also mentioned earlier, abiding in the state of dreamlike illusion. It is somewhat difficult for the mind to truly abide in a dreamlike illusory state. But on the other hand, from the perspective of understanding, this is not difficult. Having studied the fundamental wisdom of the middle way, or the 400 verses on the middle way, or the entering the middle way, you should know all phenomena are in their essence devoid of any truly existent dharma. Not even the tiniest particle of a truly existent dharma can be found. If it cannot be found, then all these things appearing before us are merely creations of the mind. They are produced by our discriminating and deluded thoughts, just like the mountains, rivers, and earth in a dream, just like friends and relatives in a dream. At that time, if we discover the root of our deluded thoughts, then we should understand the source of everything. So, generally speaking, Shakyamuni Buddha, according to the three different capacities of sentient beings, turned the three great Dharma wheels of the Dharma indeed. The Dharma wheel's turning has 4 stages. Due to varying capacities, the first turning taught karma, cause and effect, in the conventional world. Then in the ultimate sense, he taught the principle of selflessness of persons. This is something that all of us can relate to, can basically fully understand it. because the present-day teachings on individual liberation or the teachings of the Hinayana tradition are more suitable for us ordinary people in the world. Moreover, the Buddhist monastics of the Hinayana tradition, the monastics that most of us have in mind, are Shravakayana monastics. Their conduct aligns with Dharma. They do not eat after noon, or often reside in monasteries, frequently reciting sutras and meditating. Generally speaking, this is the first turning of the Dharma wheel, refers to teachings given in the first stage. In the second stage, the Buddha taught the Dharma of emptiness to sentient beings who still held on to substantial reality. He expounded teachings on emptiness. All those phenomena that were previously regarded as truly existent were further analyzed and determined to be entirely empty in their fundamental nature. This profound view was clearly explained by Nagarjuna and his followers, just as described in the 6 Madhyamaka treatises. So, as for this, we are mainly discussing the Mahayana Bodhisattva path. The teachings of the Bodhisattva path contain many inconceivable states and realizations which are generally difficult for ordinary people to comprehend. However, if one analyzes with wisdom, it is indeed that all phenomena cannot truly be established. In the third stage, are all phenomena merely empty? In fact, that is not the case either. All phenomena possess the indivisible nature of luminosity and emptiness. This is the tantric Dharma wheel that extends from the third turning. This is what is taught in the third stage. Therefore, what is discussed here is the inseparability of emptiness and appearance, which is elevated to what? To the pure world and the pure Dharma realm. As for these principles, if we understand them step by step, we should be able to grasp them. So here, within the first turning of the Dharma wheel, the emptiness or the selflessness of persons that is analyzed, or what is taught in the second turning of the Dharma wheel, the principle that all phenomena are empty and lack any true substance, this very principle, so from form all the way to omniscient wisdom, all phenomena are without acceptance or rejection, without any true inherent existence, and one can truly abide within such a state. In the very moment of these appearances, although they seem to exist and appear real, they are momentary and impermanent, like clouds and lightning, gradually changing and ultimately disappearing completely. Here, it begins to explain that everything is like a dream or an illusion. How is everything like a dream or an illusion? This is analyzed from two aspects. First, the first aspect, everything is subject to change and therefore impermanent. The third aspect, everything in the world of objects and sentient beings is impermanent. Furthermore, their eventual destruction also shows their lack of true existence. So, it is analyzed from impermanence and lack of true existence. So, what is it like? These appearances in the entire world we live in, whether it's the world of objects or sentient beings, whether it's samsara or nirvana, at the very moment when all pure and impure appearances arise, while they are manifesting, if we carefully and closely observe them, in fact, although it seems that they truly and solidly exist, that they are truly existent phenomena, right there in front of each and every one of us, whether it is your cherished friends and beloved family, majestic mountains, flowing rivers, verdant grasses, or towering trees, or your respected relatives and dedicated servants, all these phenomena, both inside and outside, it seems that when you are not observing, they truly and really exist in a concrete and undeniable way. But such a true existence and being, in its most fundamental sense, are nothing more than an illusory appearance. They cannot remain for even a second moment. They are impermanent, changing moment by moment. If we observe according to the reasoning of the ornament of the middle way, any phenomenon at all will certainly cease within a single instant. If it could remain into a second moment, the phenomenon of the second moment would persist into the third and fourth moments, and in this way it would not cease even after 100 moments. Therefore, any phenomenon ceases in just a single instant. But even this instant is often something our own minds designate. For example, if we were to call one particular instant in time a second, then even a second is made up of many extremely subtle units of time. If we divide it like this, an instant is also just a relatively short concept. It is also just a concept. So all such phenomena are in fact impermanent from moment to moment. This impermanence is often illustrated with metaphors like clouds or lightning, For example, in the collection of scriptures on the Buddha's deeds, it is said, like autumn clouds that suddenly gather and then disperse. Autumn clouds may appear and suddenly fill the entire vast expanse of the sky, but in the end they quickly vanish again, like a sudden flash of brilliant lightning, appearing abruptly and then disappearing just as quickly. Lightning, for example, appears as suddenly as a flash of light, and just as it appears out of nowhere, it vanishes just as quickly. There are also things like water bubbles, mirages, and banana trees, all of which on the surface seem to appear before us, but in reality none of them truly exist. Therefore, everything is gradually changing, and ultimately all things come to an end. So, first and foremost, when we consider all these various phenomena, we absolutely shouldn't think to ourselves, oh, they are inherently solid, they truly and independently exist as such. For example, some people's social status, when you attain a brand new and exciting position, you feel incredibly happy, but you don't realize that in reality, this status might not last very long, and it could disappear in a very short time. When we see a particularly beautiful environment outside or any other thing, in fact, it perishes moment by moment. Some things have continuity, appearing for a slightly longer period, while others disappear quickly. So these things also come to an end in a very short time, which is impermanence. That's why the teaching on impermanence is especially important. Personally, I have also read many teachings related to impermanence. I've talked about them before as well. For example, in the Dharma of Jaga Mountain, opening the door to mind training, and also including the profound and extensive teachings of the Venerable Longchenpa. There are indeed many significant teachings on the concept of impermanence. In particular, I believe the most comprehensive and insightful explanations of impermanence are often quoted by many great masters of the past. The Udana Varga Sutra, we used to call the Sutra of Essential Dharma verse, explains this very well. I've also studied this particular sutra for many, many years. Around February 2019, I compared the Tibetan and Chinese versions again. At that time, I discovered that Tianxi Zai, there was already a translation over 1,000 years ago. But because so much time has passed, when comparing it with the Tibetan version, there are certain difficulties. Later in May of that year, I received a transmission from an old Lama. Then in 2020, I originally wanted to give a teaching in October, but when it came to the actual teaching, it seemed that the significant differences between the Tibetan and Chinese versions were also quite significant. So at that time, in October, I didn't give the teaching. I originally wanted to talk about a few products, or as it clearly and precisely says, chapter on right speech, chapter on right mindfulness, chapter on samana. I wanted to talk about these, but then I didn't. Then in January of the year 2021, I went to consult the Indian Master Compare with Master Hui Kai's annotations. So we may talk about the Udana Sutra next time. When I talk to you about the Udana Sutra, if I can successfully finish the entire thing, that would, of course, be absolutely excellent. For example, just like our Ornament of the Sutras back in the day, we covered a portion each year. Because it has 33 chapters, its content is quite extensive, but this one is relatively simple as it's in verse form. Even though simple, the content inside is extremely useful for our practice. Generally, internationally speaking, for example, we have the Christian Bible, the Islamic Quran, and the Buddhist Sutra of Essential Dharma verses, all of which are sacred texts. These are known as the three major scriptures of the three major religions. So, in Theravada Buddhism, this text is also given special importance. Back then, in Tibet, Gendon Chompul translated some of the verses from Sanskrit into Tibetan. But even that version is incomplete. So, the Tibetan version in our current Kangyur is considered relatively complete. However, there are not many Chinese translations of this text. Although there are some scattered excerpts when it comes to these parts, they seem to differ somewhat from current teachings. There are some discrepancies as well. Therefore, in Tibetan Buddhism, there are also its verses and commentaries. So it is relatively complete. If the conditions are right for us, this sacred scripture, which can actually also be considered a comprehensive and detailed treatise, and also a comprehensive compilation of sutras, which was very well compiled by the Arhat Dharmatrata at that time. So today, we also want to talk to everyone about this in more detail. You truly need to understand the fundamental nature of all things as completely lacking inherent existence, and to realize that everything is like a dream or an illusion. We may need to read more scriptures and treatises related to this topic, as well as some pith instruction books from masters. That would be very beneficial. In fact, in real life, it would be quite advantageous indeed. Impermanence is truly everywhere around us. Once I met someone who explicitly said that their company, in its operations, had worked hard for 7 or 8 years and was about to go public. But then when the pandemic broke out, suddenly all the nearly 10,000 employees had to be let go. In the end, the entire company collapsed quite badly. So in our real lives, whether it's your personal wealth, your social status, or any other aspect, or even our very own bodies and so on, some things we usually tend to think of as being in good condition, like an athlete's body, can encounter problems right on the field. And there are many such situations. That's why the principle of impermanence is truly very important. If you understand this well, it's very easy to grasp the idea that everything is like a dream or an illusion, because like a dream or an illusion, appearances do exist, but these appearances vanish in a very short time. They're just like bubbles in water, just like a mirage, just like a real rainbow. So these metaphors are truly enough to help you gain a deeper understanding of the true nature of the world. Buddhism is not intended to establish its own sectarian school, indeed, nor does it insist on asserting itself. There's nothing like it. Therefore, the highest view in Buddhism, that of Madhyamaka Prasangika school, as Master Chandrakirti said, I do not make any assertions, so I am free from any faults. In Buddhism, our main focus is to seek the true nature of all phenomena, or in other words, their truth. If we understand what this truth is, then every sentient being should come to know it. But not only do sentient beings not truly understand, they even fabricate and construct complete falsehoods on top of this very fundamental truth. And in the end, they become bound by these fabrications, trapping themselves like a silkworm in its own cocoon. So, in my view, it is very important for many of us to further and more deeply understand the principles of Buddhism. I also hope that everyone here, even though in your daily life or in your current place of residence, your academic studies, many aspects and circumstances may significantly change and evolve, but we are still able to accept these changes. The other day we were talking with some Dharma friends from the Water Conservancy Project, including a few Tibetan lamas, about how this year's Water Conservancy Project was completed. One of the lamas said, "In the past, our team was very complete, but now there's only one person, and it's really too busy. They have no time to guide us anymore." As for another person, he has already become a monk at a monastery outside. That night he couldn't sleep at all. Why? Because this volunteer is doing very well. He was sad not because he became a monk, but rather his team is lacking members, so he felt very sorrowful that day. He asked me to be sure to find some volunteers. Then I jokingly said that in the past, whether it was giving teachings or Dharma talks, the volunteers on our team could be said to have had its heyday. But now, no matter what I do, I also feel incredibly lonely and utterly helpless, actually even more truly miserable than you. At that, he started to laugh. Perhaps he felt the very same way, deep down. So whether it's truly you, or perhaps me, or even him, it truly doesn't matter. In everyone's real life, impermanence can appear at any given moment, often quite unexpectedly and without warning. When impermanence truly and fully arises, we should remind ourselves, oh, we often hear that like a dream, like an illusion, it appears without inherent nature. It manifests, but then quickly disappears. We should carefully observe and learn in this particular way.
Shi changne jigdang nam di nangar gangshon target dirtik so ngime da yo ndotun laksam ne tangzan den zan ma che jimr to.
External phenomena go through arising and ceasing. Internally, we experience youth and decline and so on. Reflecting on this unstable and ever-changing nature, do not cling to permanence or reality. Regard all as illusion. Actually, with these spiritual songs in our daily lives, if we recite them ourselves in a pleasant voice ourselves, if we recite them ourselves in a pleasant voice, and listen to them often during our leisure time after meals, it's actually quite enjoyable. The second point about impermanence is explained like this. The external world has the 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter, and whether it's a season, whether it's a month or a day, they all go through a process of arising, abiding, decaying, and ceasing. At first, they come into being, for example, when spring begins. Then there is the period when spring is present, and finally, when summer arrives, spring ends. This is the process of arising, abiding, decaying, and ceasing. The external material world also constantly changes, and the intricate inner world of sentient beings, from early childhood to blossoming youth, from youth to adulthood and middle age, and then to old age, the entire body, along with many emotions, including things like hair. There are many changes. For people, they also have times of prosperity and times of decline, times of suffering, times of happiness, and so on, constantly changing without end. If, as practitioners, we reflect deeply on this inherently unstable, ever-shifting, the very nature of things, we realize, wow, all phenomena in the world truly have absolutely nothing that we can genuinely rely on at all. All of these are subject to change. Right now, in this very world we currently inhabit, in our daily lives, even the slightest change that occurs can actually be unbearable, causing extreme suffering. But in fact, it shouldn't be this way, because all phenomena are impermanent. This is their inherent law. There's really nothing to it. So we shouldn't cling to things as permanent, nor should we insist on their true existence. We should view them as dreamlike and illusory, because at the beginning of this teaching, the subtitle is Applying the Path as Dreamlike and Illusory. And in our practice, we need to apply this method. So, as the words of my perfect teacher says, it also discusses 7 analogies for impermanence, such as contemplating the external world of physical objects, contemplating the inner world of sentient beings, reflecting upon the great masters, eminent monks, kings, and ministers of the past, as well as various other analogies, and so on and so forth. When we look at it through many such analogies, indeed, in the entire world, there is nothing truly reliable. And the play in full also discusses this. The impermanence of the 3 realms is like autumn clouds. The birth and death of sentient beings is like watching a play. When we talk about all these countless worlds, they truly are just like ephemeral autumn clouds. In fact, autumn clouds are quite different from those seen in spring or winter. Their changes are even more rapid and significantly more obvious. The arising and ceasing of sentient beings is just like watching a play. When we watch a play, sometimes things appear, sometimes they disappear. It is also ever-changing and impermanent. So in the entire world, if we view it as a dream or an illusion, wow, this world is just like that. Looking at my own life and my own practice, including my own mindset, it is also constantly changing. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing okay. My practice and all aspects seem pretty good. But sometimes my emotions are very unstable, for no apparent reason, inexplicably. I feel down, troubled, anxious, and extremely distressed. Sometimes I feel neither happiness nor suffering, which can be considered a state of equanimity. This happens too. So if everyone looks inward at their very own mind, it is also constantly changing and impermanent. The friends and family around us are also impermanent. The external world, spring, summer, autumn, winter, or the physical world, is also in a state of constant change. Even the places we have lived from childhood until now are all impermanent and ever-changing. The places where I used to teach at Larung were constantly changing as well. Every time I moved to a new Dharma center, I would think, wow, maybe I'll be here for a long time. But after a few years, due to various causes and conditions, I would have to move again. So this includes our families, our workplaces, and all sorts of aspects in life are constantly undergoing changes, especially in the current climate. With rapid rise of artificial intelligence, many individuals have absolutely no choice but to adapt to these profound changes in their professional roles and jobs. But these changes shouldn't make everyone feel especially pained or particularly lost. We should keep working hard and do our best in everything we do, because in many areas there are still opportunities. This kind of significant change for you might also be a profound process of personal growth. So, no matter what, all of our spiritual practice, if we can truly respond to it as if it were merely a dream or perhaps an illusion, this is indeed a profound and extremely important consideration for all practitioners.
도메티네 따르타 옌초다 랑즈는 디르티치르나 디만자 가르송 메테 땅상 파노드 짜르 따르타 마고 낭츠 때단자.
From beginningless time until now, happiness and suffering of self and others appear just like illusions. There is no real gain or loss, nothing to pursue. This is true now and will be so in the future. All the joys and sufferings experienced by yourself and others that have appeared, if you observe, there's no difference. They are all like dreams, illusions. From your perspective, we may not be able to recall everything since beginningless time, but at the very least, in the parts of life I can remember, all the various things that have appeared in daily life, all this suffering and happiness, we have cried many times. We have also laughed many times, we have been happy many times, and we have suffered many times. But looking at it now, everything from yesterday and before, all the various appearances and experiences in our lives, but looking at it today, is there really any difference between dreams, illusions, bubbles, and shadows? There isn't. Some of them don't exist as appearances anymore, and some only exist as a single appearance. Other than that, there's nothing else. So, as Rongzom Pandita also said in the Entering the Great Vehicle treatise, there is only the appearance, and what is fully and perfectly displayed. It displays the unique characteristic of a phenomenon. This means that from impurity to purity, the only thing that never ceases is appearance. For example, in the presence of the Buddha's wisdom, there is also an appearance. In front of the impure perception of ordinary beings, there is also an appearance. When we often discuss the lamp of certainty, we also ask whether the beings of the six realms truly share a common perception at that very moment, whether it's the repulsive pus and blood seen by hungry ghosts, the flames of hell, the water perceived by animals, or the water seen by sentient beings, or the nectar, or the goddess Mamaki seen by the gods. All of these share a very common visual appearance. But does this appearance have any real substance? It does not. So in our daily lives, when we think this is an enemy combatant, a hostile presence, there is also an appearance of an enemy, but someone else, your friend, may see that person as a friend, while the other side, however, sees them as an enemy. There is only an appearance if you look for a true enemy or friend. In essence, it does not exist. This also applies to beauty and ugliness in our world. What we find especially unattractive might be seen as very attractive by that person's partner. So what we share is just a common perception, which is merely an appearance. There is nothing beyond that. Of course, this appearance is not something that truly exists either. Therefore, from beginningless time until now, or everything that you have seen in your entire life up to this very day for you, has brought neither any real harm nor any real benefit. We don't truly know if it was ever really real back then. For example, some people strive tirelessly for their careers, or even fight for their cherished relationships, and so on. In various significant moments of life at that particular time, it felt especially profoundly important, so much so that people were genuinely willing to risk their very lives for it. But looking back now, it's just like watching a movie at that particular time, or perhaps like a movie I watched just yesterday. There's truly no significant difference at all. So everything that appears to us today and in the future, all these phenomena, it's precisely the same. In the end, it also has no real benefit or any significant harm, nor is there anything to be grasped. If we look at it from the perspective of the three times, past, present, and future minds cannot be found. Similarly, my past suffering cannot be found. My present suffering cannot be found, and my future suffering too. So, as stated in the Maharatnakuta Sutra, all phenomena in the three realms are like illusions without a single ultimate truth. There is nothing truly real. None of the phenomena in the three realms possess any ultimate reality. Just as it is stated in the Diamond Sutra, there is no coming, nor is there any going. This is said in reference to the Tathagata. All phenomena neither come from anywhere nor go anywhere. If you truly examine it, this is how it is. This is not something I'm saying just because I'm a Buddhist, to give you a Buddhist perspective. But if a non-Buddhist individual truly looks at it, they may indeed genuinely think that there is coming and going. But that's not the case. No matter who examines it, no matter who observes, As long as you genuinely accept sound logic, as long as you truly accept clear and true reasoning, then it can be firmly established in front of anyone. So sometimes we also deeply reflect on this important point. When we previously discussed rest in illusion, Venerable Longchenpa also said that absolutely everything that occurred before yesterday is truly yesterday's dream. Today's events are today's present dream, and everything after tomorrow is tomorrow's dream. So dreams are not real. In fact, everything in our lives is also essentially like sentient beings living in a fleeting dream or a grand illusion. Apart from this, there is no true reality. When this kind of principle is first explained, just like I mentioned just yesterday, it's quite similar to the experience of learning to ride a bicycle for the very first time. You understand the theory, but in practice it's difficult. But once you truly understand the principle, it really does help with the afflictions in your own mind stream. Gradually, little by little, what we used to think was the entire world, whether it's your career, your relationships, your marriage, or everything else that you currently possess, you might have been especially attached to them. You believed they were 100% real, right? Ordinary people like us, those who haven't thoroughly studied or deeply contemplated these matters, regard everything in our current reality, all these gains and losses, as completely real. But after you study some Madhyamaka philosophy, it's true, you realize, I used to be so attached to these things. But in fact, even in theory, they're not entirely real. It's just that right now, I still can't fully let go. But if you can't do it yet, that's okay. As long as you already understand it in theory first, that's the most crucial part. If you understand it in theory, then gradually you can start to counteract your own affliction. So all of our appearances are also like dreams and illusions. If we use the analogy of dreams and illusions as a method, there still needs to be a particularly well-founded, comprehensive, and robust framework, kind of guiding approach. The way Mipham Rinpoche elucidated it, every single verse is profoundly and exceptionally incisive. They critically examine our deeply ingrained and habitual concepts. Or you could certainly say they fundamentally challenge our entire understanding of the worldview we hold.
Lagbargsiadnan kurndi dirdik nawa na tsugman rachir na yang stogbo gongo jikpa tsamjigle ngo nyidmet dimar malamra.
Examine all forms of suffering and happiness in samsara and nirvana. They are established by conceptual thought, lacking true nature like dreams and illusions. All the phenomena encompassed by samsara and nirvana, all the pain, happiness, and so on, these phenomena among them, what appears are all different forms. For example, sentient beings in the 6 realms, each individual experiences their own unique kinds of happiness and suffering. The pure lands of all the Buddhas of the 3 times, in the east, south, west, and north, for instance, the eastern land of joy, the southern jewel-born pure land, the western pure land of ultimate bliss, and the northern pure land of accomplishment of Amoghasiddhi. All, in fact, have both pure and impure aspects and various appearances. But in reality, all are established by conceptual thought. Some people might think the impure 6 realms of samsara established by conceptual thought. But how is purity established conceptually? These pure lands, according to the great net of illusion view, all of these arise and manifest within wisdom. Anything that has form is illusory, so as long as there is form, it is not truly established. Therefore, in the end, our practice should lead us to a naturalist state, like a dream or an illusion. All suffering and happiness and all phenomena are like dreams and illusions. As it is also stated in the Avatamsaka Sutra, all dharmas are just like dreams. And in the Maharatnakuta Sutra, it also says something like, the wise remain unmoved by suffering and happiness like empty space. For the wise, all these experiences of suffering and happiness are transient, and all sorts of worldly appearances, they remain completely unmoved, just like empty space. Empty space is entirely without any form of bias, completely free from division, and utterly devoid of separation. For the truly wise, within the profound depths of their realization, they perceive that all suffering and all happiness, all the highs and all the lows of existence, are ultimately seen as one, and all the arising and ceasing phenomena of the world are met with unwavering equanimity, truly and utterly unshaken by the 8 worldly winds.
Dedun shina tumida rangdugum jone number tobim samdong te gardug re tor ponler zir zora ya chilaramo jenda jikde jit.
Understanding this principle, one sees that pointless afflictions and deluded thoughts are the source of suffering. Hopes and fears, striving and avoidance of suffering and happiness vanish like a drawing in water, and the practitioner finds joy. It is said that after understanding it, what will you directly perceive? You will see that the source of your meaningless suffering is deluded thoughts and discriminating mind. If you understand the above principles, then in fact, the true culprit behind everything, what is it? It is our deluded and discriminating thoughts. So, as in the wheel of sharp weapons for mind training, right? It says to trample the root of misfortune, deluded thoughts, right? The root of all harm is deluded thoughts. We must absolutely trample its head. We must utterly destroy these deluded and misguided thoughts. If we truly realize that all meaningless, self-inflicted suffering genuinely comes from these profound sources of pain, which are actually deluded thoughts, just as the esteemed Master Dignaga once said, the root of the three realms is deluded thought. So, in fact, this particular delusion is in reality quite like when we previously studied the Shurangama Sutra. It was also mentioned there that if you use deluded thoughts, in reality, these thoughts are not true. If thoughts are not real, that's why there is samsara. Wasn't that discussed then? Because the Shurangama Sutra has many key points and methods for eliminating deluded thoughts. There are so many of them. So when we understand the root of everything, the ultimate source of all harm is deluded and misguided thought. In this way, all suffering, happiness, hope, and worry are fully experienced, as well as all kinds of effort, striving, acceptance, and rejection. All of these will vanish like a drawing in water. In the end, when you truly understand the root of everything, if it is deluded thought, then all your worldly, various dualistic choices and discriminations will all be like patterns drawn in water. They will all completely disappear in that very moment. At this time, such a truly dedicated practitioner is truly joyful and deeply content. And this kind of practitioner should be very able to go with the flow. As we used to say, gain and loss follow conditions. The mind neither increases nor decreases. I think this is from a scripture or something. We've talked about this with everyone before, haven't we? Let gain and loss follow conditions. Just let them come and go with circumstances. The mind shouldn't be constantly increasing and decreasing. Of course, when we talk about it, it sounds like this. When you listen, it sounds like that. And when you tell others, it sounds quite another way. But in your actual daily life or in your practice, if all sorts of situations arise, it's not necessarily something you can actually do. But if you really can do it, then that practitioner is joyful. In His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche's Song of the Joyful Path of Yoga, it is said, living is joyful, spread dharma and benefit beings, and dying is joyful, one will surely be reborn in pure land of ultimate bliss. That's how it's described. In front of such a practitioner, they can come and go freely, everything, whether flowers bloom or wither. For them, it is truly a wondrous and profound state of skillful means, a masterful application of wisdom and compassion, entirely free from any form of suffering or distress. I believe our revered Tsangpa Gyare, the esteemed spiritual master and founder of the Drukpa Kagyu lineage, Tsangpa Gyare of the Kagyu lineage, didn't he say? He said, let what is meant to come, come. Let what is meant to go, go. In the end, seek not for truth. In all matters, we are like this. For example, if I want to go on a pilgrimage today, I ask you to bless me so that everything goes smoothly. Most of us, ordinary, everyday people, whenever we want to do something, we ask for blessings so that everything goes smoothly. I am like this too. Every time I want to translate a treatise, I first recite a protective prayer, recite a protective verse, and ask the Dharma protectors to bless me, wishing that my work will be completed successfully. But for those with a higher level of spiritual attainment, just like Changpa Gyare mentioned earlier, if suffering comes, let it come. If it goes, let it go. Just go with the flow. I do not seek any profound truth, indeed, nor do I ask for anything at all. Many great masters and eminent monks of the Kadampa tradition also have such practice instructions. Many great masters of the Nyingma tradition truly practice this way in their spiritual path. The way many ordinary people do things is a bit different. As for us ordinary people, we hope to be happy. I hope for good health, I hope for a good mood, but truly advanced practitioners
If my happiness benefits sentient beings, then let me be happy. If my unhappiness benefits sentient beings, then let me not be happy. It's almost like a kind of self-curse. It's as if in the whole world, there is nothing in particular that you absolutely have to strive for yourself. There is no ultimate truth that you must insist on for yourself. So in that case, wouldn't this be very upside down? Does this mean that as Buddhists, it seems like we are turning things upside down, confusing black and white? Or is it that we don't understand this? It's not like that either. In fact, there are truly two kinds of being upside down. There are some people, the kind of upside down that ordinary people commonly know, confusing black and white. But there is another kind, and in their state, truly no adverse circumstance can cause them any significant harm at all whatsoever. This is the highest level of spiritual practice. In our world, there are some people who are extremely tolerant, even though they haven't achieved this through spiritual practice. Their minds are still very broad and open. Among people, there are two types. One type is perhaps due to some virtuous deeds from their past lives. In this life, they do not experience much suffering. But many people are becoming more and more miserable, especially with our current education system. It's truly something everyone should seriously consider and reflect upon. What is it like right now? Actually, it's just like what was discussed in the previous lesson. With the current extensive big data analysis capabilities, many businesses, for the sake of consumption and to effectively stimulate consumers' purchasing desires and wants, generally speaking, our short videos, most short videos, for example, if a man is watching short videos, a significant amount of female-oriented content will typically be shown to him as a common occurrence. For example, stories about his wife cheating. What happens then? How does she treat him, and how should he fight back? If it's a woman watching, then it's about how terrible her husband is. If it's parents watching, then it's about how unfilial their children are. If it's children watching, it's about how badly their parents treat them. If the parents are good to them, then why, when they come into this world, are there people who are rich and powerful? It seems like people like us are influenced by negative information created by temporary delusional thoughts of separation. And this negative information is constantly being fed to you. As a result, you inevitably start to feel deeply insecure. It's like trying to find your own true reflection in a mirror, and then you ultimately end up damaging your family and your community. So now, under the control of big data in the internet era, a lot of short videos and information are actually sowing discord, stirring up conflict between people, including the intricate relationships between husbands and wives, between teachers and their students, between fathers and their sons. All these vital relationships are being continuously and significantly damaged. This is something that many of us might really only be able to truly find the inherent value of life itself within information itself. And that's especially sad and truly pitiful. So on one hand, the primary reason why nowadays more and more people are increasingly suffering from various mental disorders like profound depression and persistent anxiety is exactly because of this very significant issue. Another thing is that now basically many kids in their early teens are getting depression. They always feel that the school doesn't recognize them, and their parents don't recognize them either. As a direct result of this, many people are simply unwilling to go to school at all and go straight into psychiatric hospitals. After coming out, their thinking abilities and cognitive functions are often incomplete. Such concerning phenomena are becoming more and more common. So when it comes to fundamentally changing education, if we want to make a change, it may be beyond our power. But especially for everyone who is listening to this, particularly for Buddhists, when it comes to the attitudes and dispositions toward the people around you, I just want to try to give a gentle reminder. This is because many of us, especially on short videos and in some of the information that we frequently encounter and observe, we are constantly being fed negative messages about the state of education. Then you start to believe, wow, the whole world must be like this. So generally speaking, there is basically no education about truth, goodness, and beauty. Information on the internet is overwhelming. But among all this, what is most of it? It's designed to catch your eye, and then a lot of negative content appears. Apart from political issues, nowadays there is a lot of negative information about morality. It keeps continuously expanding and widely spreading, and it gets clearly displayed right in front of your very eyes. At times like this, your mind naturally starts to follow along with it. The more you deeply dwell on it, the more you intently watch it, the more it captivates your attention. In the very end, it truly feels like it's deeply true in your heart. Nowadays, many young children are wondering how to effectively deal with their parents, how to stand up to their parents, how to push back against them. It's the same between married couples. So now, when they argue, all the things they say are actually provocative phrases deliberately designed by the merchants, which they use to attack each other. Sometimes when we look at the world, let's not even talk about seeing the true nature of things as illusory, like a dream. Even the illusory nature itself, people don't realize it's like a dream or an illusion. It is, in fact, like a dream or an illusion, but you take it as something real. When someone tries to provoke you online, you actually fall for it and use those words. But the Buddhist teachings and practices that we should be applying when shared online get extremely and consistently low view counts. When people talk about truths, the view counts are very low. But if it's about arguments or even things that, from a moral standpoint, used to be strictly forbidden, but nowadays people actually like some of these harsh, cutting words. And everyone thinks that's absolutely great, and after a little while it becomes completely normalized. In such an era, this is actually a phenomenon of a degenerate age. Because the world outside is so impure, our minds as sentient beings are also swayed by external circumstances, which is really quite pitiable. So nowadays, many practitioners, for example, we've noticed that about 10 years ago, those who were especially diligent, holding prayer beads, holding prayer wheels, people who usually spent their time in retreat or meditation, now whether it's themselves or others, many have already become intoxicated by these hallucinogens. It's really quite pitiable as well. So perhaps the sentient beings of the future, the innocent children of the future, will be even more pitiable than us. So in this hallucinatory world, if this profound illusion is never truly broken, sentient beings will continue to be deeply immersed in it, which is rather frightening to consider.
토멘 셔비야 장왕 송송 왜 레지 꿈장 집진 종가 양 mabjit gomna gomba jichagne ndartar temjong nawa plumeder nam nang nam ki nganer mugdibjin semni da ningmi hlongnar tsar nang da kornde jimi nawa na tsur ton tobbe mabjang rangsar rangjur yin.
Carried along by beginningless confusion, even temporary practice is very hard to truly accomplish. By not forgetting to repeatedly familiarize, it gradually becomes a habit. All appearances arise dependently and never deceive. Though they appear like a mirage in empty space, the fundamental nature of mind displays wondrous power. It manifests the various illusory forms of samsara and nirvana, yet is not bound by deluded thoughts and is self-liberated. Here, in the end, it is said that one must practice constantly. If you do practice, it's actually not that difficult. It may be a bit hard at first, but it's still doable. Many great masters of the past, they practiced through their efforts. They severed of samsara. So, what are we like? Since beginningless time, we've always been following ignorance and have been wandering in confusion in this world. Now we have encountered these spiritual teachers and the dharma of practice, and so we practice. But when it comes to practice, it's difficult to achieve realization quickly. Some people say, I've been meditating for months, I've been meditating for years, and yet I still haven't succeeded. What should I do? Many people aren't familiar with Buddhist principles. They don't really understand them well. If you truly understood, you would know that the afflictions in our mental continuum are actually a very serious chronic illness. If we only take temporary worldly medicine, there's simply no way to be cured. We must understand that in the mental continuum of sentient beings, this habitual tendency of ignorance has been deeply rooted since beginningless time. It's an extremely deep, incredibly solid, and very stable condition indeed. It's not as if there's just some temporary obstacle that is stuck to you. That's certainly not the case at all. So, within a very short period of time, it's really quite difficult to achieve true realization or significant success. However, if we don't lose our mindfulness and keep practicing, keep reinforcing the habit, there's nothing in this world that, with enough habituation, cannot eventually be accomplished. Gradually, as one becomes accustomed to it, there will indeed be certain states that arise in practice. In those states, we experience the infallible appearance of dependent origination, especially when we study Madhyamaka, for example. we ultimately come to understand the principle of the emptiness of dependent origination. Although all phenomena are empty when causes and conditions are complete, or when dependent origination is unceasing, they appear infallibly. Even though these appearances arise, if we truly examine them, they are like a mirage in the sky, ultimately non-existent. So what is the cause of all these appearances? In fact, the original fundamental nature of each and every one of our minds is unborn and undying. Yet within this, just like clouds appearing in the open sky, wondrous powers manifest and display the various illusory forms of both samsara and nirvana. Therefore, if we are not bound by these deluded thoughts, which often cloud our understanding and perception of reality, we naturally attain a state of true and profound liberation. So, what we are essentially trying to convey and communicate here is that why these profound teachings are so incredibly valuable indeed. In fact, the great masters of the past, in their quest for the Dharma, sacrificed their precious lives and willingly paid this significant price to ultimately obtain it. Some, for example, in Han region or Tibetan region, some truly great and revered masters even embarked on arduous and perilous journeys, traveling extensively to distant India or other foreign countries, and bringing large amounts of gold to seek the teachings. Just like when we talk about the arrival of the Shurangama Sutra, when it arrived in this world, what was it like? The story of how the great perfection teachings came into this world, everyone should also be aware of. So, for those individuals who do not truly value the truth, these teachings are nothing more than words in a book. They mean nothing. But for those who truly seek the truth, these are extremely, extremely precious. So whether it is the profound teachings of the Middle Way or the sacred teachings of Vajrayana, they truly can solve our deepest psychological problems. Not only the psychological problems we face in this life, but even those that actually span lifetimes. The supreme and ultimate key to liberation from the confusion and suffering of samsara is being offered to you. This is extremely rare and precious. So I often encounter some people who are always, including some Buddhists, in fact, they keep learning on their own. For example, by reading books and studying continuously, studying the Middle Way, or the great illusory net teachings, and after a certain period of time, they more or less come to fully understand the true and fundamental nature of the entire world. In Buddhism, there is an incredible sense of inclusiveness and a profound vastness. Sometimes, when we talk about stories from the Tantras, for example, we encounter significant figures like Bimalamitra and Guru Rinpoche when they enter the pure lands of the Dakinis into the treasure troves of tantric teachings to select and retrieve these Dharma texts. It is as vast as entering an ocean. But even a single book obtained from within, its inherent value and profound power are also truly inconceivable. So, what exactly should we endeavor to learn and meticulously analyze? We should cultivate the ability to precisely discern what possesses genuine and lasting value and what is merely commonplace or ordinary. Therefore, in our brief and precious lives, it is very important to understand how to make wise choices. Because nowadays, among our Dharma friends, sometimes I hear about some Dharma friends' experiences, aspirations to widely spread the Dharma and greatly benefit all sentient beings and their diligent efforts in personal practice, which is truly inspiring. We who have been ordained for many years have basically never really given up either. But compared to their very diligence, their pure and innocent minds, and their profound bodhicitta, we still fall far short. So sometimes when we observe the stories of some Buddhists living in large cities nowadays, they are truly very moving, and perhaps now their understanding is quite stable. And some people have already been diligently studying for 10 or even 20 years. Back when we held the Tara Puja in Hong Kong, I also specifically asked everyone at that particular time if they could make a vow, at least not to give up their practice and study for 10 years. Looking back now, it seems that many people who made that vow back then really have not given up. Later on, I also met many people, and in order to properly mark this special occasion, we gave each person a mala bead. Later, among different groups of people, I also met many of them again, sometimes at the train station, sometimes among crowds outside, and sometimes we would recognize each other. and there were people from all kinds of professions. But what you do for a living isn't important. It truly doesn't matter where or what you do. The most incredibly crucial thing is that among the vast sea of people, you don't abandon your spiritual aspiration. That's important. That day, when many people were leaving the mountain, I also told them that nothing else really matters. But if you go to a Dharma center and have worked so hard for so many years, it's best right up until the moment of death not to abandon your spiritual aspiration. When His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok was nearing parinirvana, he also said, "Do not abandon your own path and do not disturb others' minds." This is the guiding principle for our lifelong practice and study. So if we look at it now, it's the same for our fellow practitioners. We need to regularly observe our own body and behavior. Of course, this is still very easily influenced by the environment, except for a very few who have truly attained realization, or those whose understanding is extremely stable. Generally speaking, at the beginning we are careful about it, but in the end, gradually, it all gets completely mixed together. Eventually, the little bit of view and practice we had slowly fades away until absolutely nothing at all remains. This kind of phenomenon does happen, but for most people, at truly critical moments, they do not give up. Instead, they persevere. In the past, in our Tibetan region, there were many moving and heroic stories during the Cultural Revolution. Indeed, the practitioners of those days, the great masters and eminent monks of that time, whether they were in prison or in any kind of situation, even when they were being criticized and denounced, the right mindfulness of taking refuge in the three jewels in their own mind streams was never truly abandoned. They were extremely steadfast, always unwavering and resolute. So, comparatively speaking, although each and every one of us in our own daily lives and spiritual practice also experiences a series of changes, and there will be changes in the future as well. However, in this ongoing process, our firm resolve for the chosen path should not be negatively affected. And indeed, this particular aspect is profoundly important. Next, I will proceed to give a comprehensive summary and a heartfelt dedication.
Jermida Shiki, Nelly Rigby, Jervi, na Starna, Ranjur, Wale, Ranchon, Ishi, Murdan, Namjurb. Jigdan Dunker member Sadney mid.
Unshakable, miraculous power self-liberates within the unchanging true nature of pure awareness. Those who are endowed with the natural wisdom eye are utterly free from the darkness of fear and suffering. Here, to summarize, this is the essence. Within this unchanging true nature of awareness, when disturbances arise, miraculous power manifests. But even this is self-liberated. Earlier, we talked about environment and sentient beings, whether it is happiness or suffering. All kinds of pure and impure appearances are actually, within the unchanging true nature, a kind of fluctuation of awareness, a fluctuation of miraculous power. But this fluctuation and awareness itself have never been separate, just like waves have never been apart from the ocean. If you recognize this, it is self-liberated in that very moment, and will not have any real benefit or harm for you. If you possess such a natural lamp of wisdom, if you are a dedicated practitioner with the profound natural eye of wisdom, then in your entire life there will be absolutely no darkness of fear or suffering whatsoever. Because there is no attachment, there is no fear. This is also stated in the Heart Sutra. Because there is no attachment, there is no fear. All the teachings spoken by Shakyamuni Buddha, when fully realized in the vast continuum of all sentient beings, when the profound state of emptiness is truly attained, then all fear, all dread, and this kind of deep sorrow will no longer exist at all. The Lotus Sutra also profoundly states that with all these truly wondrous and profound teachings, the human mind is completely without any fear or apprehension whatsoever. All the various wondrous teachings spoken by the Buddha, or if we ourselves speak of these wondrous teachings, there is no fear in one's continuum. Nowadays, many people unfortunately lack a sense of security. Whether it's in life, relationships, or spiritual practice, they spend all day talking about negative things. I feel very much ashamed at this very moment. I feel so incredibly unlucky right now. I feel so truly pitiful at this time. I feel so profoundly sad right now. Actually, I personally think that many of us shouldn't use so many negative words. If used frequently, even if we're not actually that bad and are doing quite okay, because of our words and actions, we might still be perceived negatively. We end up always thinking we're the worst, the most hopeless, the most pitiful. And in the end, we truly do become very, very pitiful ourselves, finding ourselves in a truly unfortunate and regrettable state. So, in our daily lives, it is crucial to consider this. Of course, we also shouldn't be overly arrogant. We shouldn't be too conceited or anything of that particular nature. But at the very least, we should also discuss some truly positive and genuinely commendable things about ourselves. For example, even though I may not be practicing that diligently today, my body is still healthy. I can clearly see with my own eyes and distinctly hear with my ears. I can walk with my legs and freely move my hands. I can also breathe. And in this vast world, I'm not locked up in prison, actually in this human world. If you want to be happy, there are still so many reasons to be. There is nothing to fear. Of course, this is a very simple way of putting it. But if, as I mentioned earlier, in your own mind, everything arises and is liberated by itself, if you have that kind of realization or experience, then indeed, in your mind, there is no fear at all. But generally speaking, nowadays we have these chicken soup for the soul kinds of theories, if we use them to be critical. In reality, as humans, we really shouldn't have too much negativity. Some people, it seems, even though they have very few problems or difficulties, they still feel especially miserable. For example, my own father, actually, in terms of his spiritual practice, I think it was pretty good. He diligently recited the Guru Rinpoche mantra every single day, but his tolerance for discomfort wasn't very high. Whenever he had a slight headache, he'd go, it hurts, it hurts. When he was in real pain, he'd say it every day. But now I also often get headaches. I also wonder if his headaches and mine also are the same. But maybe I'm a bit tougher, since I don't complain like that all the time. He would just keep saying, like that, over and over again, repeatedly. So at times like this, it seemed like when we were at home, it was, father has a headache again. It was as if the whole family was immersed in a kind of suffering. Actually, that's really not good at all. Indeed, among us human beings, some individuals encounter truly significant problems, yet they manage to remain very calm and composed, right? If something can be changed, then just change it. If it can't be changed, then no matter how much you suffer, it's useless. Some people's mindset should be one of tolerance, a kind of forbearance. This forbearance still requires a certain breadth of mind and magnanimity. This is also very necessary in spiritual practice. So on one hand, truly understanding all phenomena is inseparable from emptiness and luminosity. A person with such wisdom eyes has no fear in samsara. On the other hand, a person who is relatively clear-minded and insightful individual, when many significant things happen in their life, to him they are like passing clouds. They are not particularly tormenting or distressing. Let's look at two people in the same situation. One is a practitioner, the other is someone who may have never known the truth, and then both are locked in prison for 15 days. One person loses a significant amount of weight, while the other does not. What they eat and where they stay, and basically the crimes they've committed are the same. But if one person has even a little realization, he can transform the situation into a part of his path, and he can practice many dharmas. Didn't we talk about this earlier? Some of our dharma friends, because of certain circumstances, have actually spent several challenging years in prison. But not only were they not physically harmed during their time in prison, whether it was his unwavering faith or his profound compassion, none of these were lost. I used to worry whether when he went in, his personal views and opinions would be taken into consideration, would develop wrong views toward the three jewels, or harbor hatred toward fellow practitioners, or feel resentment toward his cellmates. But the result was exactly the opposite. In our community, he wasn't some great Khenpo or Khenmo, nothing extraordinary, but in that situation, he used his skillful means to help many, many people. I mentioned this once before as well. So I think for the same person, a different mindset can lead to completely different outcomes in handling things. Therefore, it's best in this world of ours not to be completely overwhelmed by truly great suffering, not to be wailing and utterly heartbroken every single day. There's really no actual need for that at all. Now for the final dedication.
Imaho jagro jonar nyangla yane pepshin lo do ji gimi chomchir ki dan ban de yir kardan ki ok rangshir rangzhor gongbam tongjir ji.
How marvelous. May all those with a karmic connection through this abide with Manjushri in their hearts, receive the blessings of the Vajra illusory deity's teachings, and realize the meaning of self-appearance and self-liberation. He ends with an exclamation, "How marvelous!" which is a kind of interjection expressing something extremely rare. Because what was taught before were all key points, although there were only about a dozen verses, the principles discussed within them for us. If someone truly practices and understands these principles, perhaps we wouldn't experience so much suffering in our lives. I feel that this year, many of our Dharma friends cherish things even more than before. Sometimes adverse conditions and suffering are indeed necessary. But see, from one particular perspective, some of our Dharma friends who used to be resident practitioners, the little wooden house he built himself with its door now closed. And at first glance, it all seems rather sad and desolate, almost forlorn. But on the other hand, each person carries this profound bodhicitta, this inherent wisdom, and then in various different places. And they begin to study, to practice, to spread the Dharma and benefit sentient beings. It seems that for them, this has actually significantly increased their profound longing for the Dharma and for spiritual truth, which is different from before. Their yearning for the truth is also different from before. This is actually a good thing. Sometimes what we call adverse conditions or favorable conditions are not so easy to define. On the surface, it may look a certain way, but in reality, there may be other outcomes. So, for these sentient beings with the right conditions, why was it said how marvelous? Because this Dharma is still very rare. It's such a short teaching, so little in quantity, yet the meaning it conveys is so profound, and in the process of practice, its effect is also very unique. So, for these sentient beings with the right conditions, those without the right conditions may not even truly hear the teachings, nor see these words. But for those with the right conditions, relying on what was mentioned above, what exactly is it that originally resides within the mind? Manjushri, the youthful one. This is from the perspective of the author. It can be said from Mipham Rinpoche's point of view, or it can also be said from our own perspective. So, relying on this condition, the blessing of Manjushri, who abides in the heart, the Vajra illusory deity teaching, his profound blessing manifests as the Vajra illusory deity's transformative sacred instructions. The profound blessing of Manjushri truly transforms into, on one hand, the indestructible Vajra when viewed from one aspect, and from another perspective, the ever-changing, illusory, and miraculous instructions. These teachings can be described as solid and unbreakable, but also as impermanent. Such a unique teaching arises through the blessing of Manjushri Bodhisattva and manifests as these instructions, so that sentient beings with the right karmic connection may encounter them. All phenomena are the profound and secret meaning of self-arising and self-liberation in the present moment. There are two ways to interpret this. One is that for sentient beings with the right karmic connection, Manjushri Bodhisattva inherently resides within their own minds. Relying on such a dependent origination after receiving these teachings and principles, they realize the secret meaning of self-arising and self-liberation, which is to say, the ultimate secret meaning of Dzogchen, or relying on Mipham Rinpoche and the teachings blessed by Manjushri Bodhisattva in his heart, the secret meaning of Dzogchen, so that all beings may attain liberation. May all beings connect this teaching, realize secret meaning of Dzogchen, and attain liberation. Sentient beings connect with this, will certainly attain some degree of liberation. I also hope that, although the text is not lengthy and covers 2 sessions, everyone will still take the time to reflect deeply on it. We also pray to Manjushri Bodhisattva, Mipham Rinpoche, and His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok. In this way, sometimes we can pray. And sometimes we slowly contemplate the meaning of the Dharma. Perhaps even such brief teachings can bring about a different experience in your mind's nature. With just a little understanding, once you recognize the nature of mind, then in this world, many things become much easier to handle and are not so laborious or painful. Therefore, relying upon the profound blessings of the Guru and your own unwavering faith, when such auspicious causes and conditions come together, the truly great Dzogchen teachings of this sacred lineage become very easy to fully understand and become clear. So having introduced these instructions to everyone, Now, regarding the small print below, there is a need to make a slight correction here. The year of the Earth Pig later, when they carefully checked their records, they definitively stated it was 1899, not the previously thought 1863. At first, when we checked, it was listed as 1863. If that were the case, Mipham Rinpoche would have been in his 20s. But if it was 1899, Mipham Rinpoche should have been 54 years old at that time. On the 13th day of the 8th month, Mipham Jamyang Gyalpa, which is one of his different names, composed this at the foot of the sacred Dorje Phanpuk mountain in Sershul. May there be much auspiciousness. Just now, in the Tibetan text, in the end, it says, may there be auspiciousness. Oh, okay, that's truly, finally, the very end of this explanation.
Bandara